The Seahorse Effect by C.R. Steinbrecher. Chapter 20. A New Home. Anakin landed his small one-man fighter in a field only just large enough for it at the back of the small house he'd picked to stay in until the twins came. Bordered by woods on all sides, the abode was private and hidden from prying eyes. Carefully, he lifted himself out of the cockpit, taking care to protect his middle, and jumped down to the ground. He landed in a crouch with one hand on the ground for balance and got up, walking to an area behind the cockpit that acted as a storage area. The hatch opened with a hiss of escaping air, and he pulled duffel after duffel of supplies out of the compartment until they surrounded him. "I'm surprised they packed all of this in there," he thought, looking around at the many bags of supplies. "Well," he muttered inwardly as he slung a bag over each shoulder and grabbed two more. "Better get everything inside." He opened the door and walked into what looked like a back entrance. White walls and a tiled floor gave the room a utilitarian look, with a shelf for your shoes and a coat hook on the wall. He continued through the small hallway into a much larger room. There was a small kitchen to one side, so he left the bags there to unpack later and decided to explore the place a bit. He walked past the small dining area adjoining the kitchen, through an open doorway, and into a short hallway. The walls were painted a light green, and he wanted to slip off his boots and dig his toes into the carpet. There were 5 doors, 2 on either side, and one at the far end. He peeked inside the one closest to him and saw a small bed with a dresser and nightstand. "Looks like a room for an apprentice," he thought, closing the door. "Then this must be for the master." He opened the door across from the small bedroom and found a much larger room, this one with a door in the wall to the left. Curious, he walked over and opened it. "Well, at least it's clean," he mumbled to himself as he looked around at the small fresher unit, although this one had an old-fashioned washing machine, and one corner was full of what looked like medical equipment. He'd have to check that out later and see if he could, repurpose some of it. Viewing the twins with the Force would work for the most part, but he needed an ultrasound machine and a few other things if he wanted to keep the babies healthy. After he inspected the shower to see how it worked, Anakin headed back into the hallway to see what was behind door number 4. Actually, when he saw it, he realized he'd been mistaken. It wasn't a real door, but an empty doorway that led into a very nice living room. It was green, like the hallway, and he sat down on the couch, settled in the middle of the room. A patch of sunlight from a skylight in the room's ceiling warmed his hair as he looked out the bay windows at a patch of jungle. "Well, this is definitely a nice spot for meditation, and who knows?" he speculated. "Maybe it was built that way on purpose." With that thought in mind, he examined the room again. It was wide, mostly empty, with a high ceiling. If he moved the few pieces of furniture against the sides of the room, he could use it to practice his saber work and other forms of combat training. "At least until I get too big for that," he laughed. He walked through the hall and out the back door again to grab some more supplies. It was when he was unpacking the food and saw a packet of Padmé's favorite tea that he remembered his promise to send her a message when he arrived. Hastily, he put the tea back in the duffel and walked out to his fighter. Inside the wing was the fighter's comm system. He opened the panel, thought for a moment about what he wanted to say, and hit the start recording button. "Hi, Padmé," he began. "I'm on planet Docilium. Don't worry, I didn't run into any trouble." He laughed. She worried about those things so much. The fact that it was warranted with the amount of trouble he ran into on a weekly basis slipped past his mind. "I just looked at the house, and it's perfect. There's even a spare bedroom for you when you come visit, and we can turn it into the twins' room in a few months. Please tell me the soonest time you can visit," he added. "I'll miss you." He finished it off with his coordinates and how to find him, and terminated the message. Closing the panel, he headed back inside to finish unpacking. After he was finished with the kitchen, he decided to take a break and check out the medical equipment in the bathroom. He rifled through a few cases of bandages and various over-the-counter medicines before he finally found something he could use. It was an internal scanner, usually used to check for bone fractures and the like. A person could get injured while sparring, and if there wasn't a medical bay on hand or a healer, you had to fix it yourself, hence the scanner. He looked at the tiny screen set into the middle. "I wonder if I could connect this to the ship's projection system," he wondered, turning the small device over in his hands. "Maybe I could record something and send it to Padmé." Relinquishing the device back into its box and protective packing, Anakin kept looking for the one thing he rather hoped he didn't find. Scalpels. Now, Anakin knew the twins had to come out eventually, and that the natural way was both impossible and not something he wanted to go through. Still, the idea of getting sliced open made his whole body tense, and it would be much worse if he had to do it to himself. "Stop that," he chided. "This is not like with women. I get to choose when it happens." But all the same, he really hoped Padme was there to help when the time came. When he didn't find anything in the medical supplies, well, besides a small scissors for bandages, but there was no way he was using those, he went back to unpacking. There was still the bedroom and bathroom to sort out after all, along with a few things he'd snuck in for the twins. The bathroom and his bedroom were easy enough to sort out with only his clothes and a few toiletries, but a small anticipatory smile pinched his lips when he grabbed the last duffel and headed for the bigger bedroom. Ignoring the large bed and most of the other furniture, Anakin opened the duffel and pulled out one of the sleepers Padme had slipped him before he left. It had a green lightsaber printed on the left side with the words, "One day," printed in white on the garment's black fabric. His smile widened at the thought of perhaps teaching saber combat to one of the twins one day. It was highly unlikely, but a father could dream, right? He put the sleeper to the side and unpacked the other few clothes. He'd put them in the dresser later, but right now it was late and he'd flown for hours to get here. Time for bed. Padme finished scanning the messages from the Senate and pulled out the datapad she'd bought along with 10 other perfectly harmless titles last week. But the book of baby names was really the one she wanted. She turned the pad on and a screen popped up with a series of options. Names by first letter. Names by meaning. Names by origin. Names by species. A chuckle escaped when she saw the fourth option. Maybe she shouldn't have bought the deluxe version of the book. She clicked the last option and a list of species came onto the screen in alphabetical order. Quickly, she scrolled down and clicked the human heading. The categories from the first screen appeared again, without the species option. Padme sat back in her chair and tucked a hand under her chin. She needed 2 girl names and 2 boy names, and since she secretly wanted their names to be similar somehow, she'd have to find all 4 with something in common. Where should she start? Finally, she decided to just pick a random page and start reading. So Padme clicked on the M icon.